Today at shopdap.com we're replacing engine mounts on a B7 2-liter A4. Okay, so engine mounts on a B7 A4. So these engine mounts are very similar to anything found on a lot of longitudinal mounted Audi and Volkswagen engines, B5, B6, B7, B8 even. How we're gonna have a mount similar to this. The hydraulic mounts on this car have failed, which is why we are replacing them. They have all of the hydraulic juices leaking out of them. We are going to be replacing these and showing you how to do so. It's a fairly simple process, but you are going to need to get underneath of the car and support the engine transmission combination with a floor jack, or in our case on a lift. And so let's get into our install. We're gonna start because we're up top with this driver's side engine mount, and it's a 13 millimeter. We're just gonna loosen this nut that's up top here, and you may want to do this from the bottom. That's entirely up to you. We have some extensions and wobbles and different things to allow this to be pretty easy for us. It's potentially not that easy for you depending on the scenario. Once we get that off, we can just pull that nut out of there and it's fine. It's just a stud sticking through, and we're gonna go underneath the car. We have already removed our lower splash shield on our car, and then we're gonna be getting underneath the engine to support it. We're using a pole jack in this instance. This is something that allows us to raise and lower the engine whenever we need to, but most people are probably gonna be on the ground on floor jacks, using a floor jack to support here, and then jack stands on the vehicle being lifted up. So this is an option too. It's not really a big deal one way or the other. As you can see, we've had tension on our engine, and it gives us the ability to get everything loose here. And this is where we're working here, and then the other side over here. Let's start here first. And we're gonna take off this 13 on the bottom here. And now we're gonna take off this top sway bar bracket bolt. And now we're gonna take out these bolts. These are part of the subframe support. So you are gonna wanna make sure that you have everything properly supported before you do this. And lastly, this one. Now keep in mind, this is supporting your subframe in the front end here. So you're gonna wanna kind of slow this down, so if anything's gonna shift, that you're paying attention as everything comes down. Now we're gonna take these other sway bar bolts off. Again, 13's on here. One thing I also did, loosen the 16 millimeter at the end of the sway bar link to allow it a little more movement. And as you can see, this bracket basically can fall out now. And then our engine mount can just come out like so. You do have to kind of push this bracket up and out of the way to allow everything to kind of move around. I think we might have to drop the engine back down to allow this mount to actually come out of the car. So what I'm gonna do is just push that up like so and slide this one back. Okay, now we're gonna go back in with our engine mount, and you do wanna make sure you have the correct one on the correct side. Driver's side one's gonna have a 379 and the other one's gonna be a 382 number. You can always check our site if you're running the part number you run is going to help you. So you should just pay attention to the box and then you'll be fine. There we go, and we're good there. Get that in place, and then we should be able to just push this guy up and in, and get that stud in. And we gotta get the upper stud in as well. And the last thing you need to do is work on the orientation. There is a locating nub on the bottom of this that you're gonna wanna make sure you get in the correct orientation. Okay, now we're going to install our bolt here in the subframe. Now, I wouldn't go crazy tightening this thing yet until you get really good threads on there. We're gonna have to push everything up to get that to happen, which you can kind of push up a little like this and then kind of thread that up. Now that we got these snugged up a little bit, we're gonna walk them up with our impact a little bit. Now keep in mind, you are gonna need to get an alignment done after this because you have affected some suspension geometry in some way. It's probably not significant, but it is the correct thing you should be doing after something like this, because dropping the subframe does change things a little bit. Now again, you do want to pay attention to the orientation on your motor mount to make sure that your before and after is in the correct place. And I'm just threading this nut on here really just as a placeholder and not really for anything else. Now we're going to take off the passenger side nut here. And that's just a 13 as well. And we're gonna remove our subframe ones. And again, with the last one in the back, we are gonna walk it down slowly. Now we're gonna remove this bracket cover. This is over our wiring. As you can see, you can't access this wiring, and frankly, you can't really take the engine mount out because of it either, because this is kind of in the way. So you have to get this loose so that you can actually All right, so since I've had enough of dealing with that right now, I think I might be able to swing it without taking that off. I'm actually just gonna drop this engine down and see if I can lower this down enough where I can get this 13 a little bit easier to access it. All right, so how we're gonna removing the nut on the top of this, same as the other one. Obviously, the other one you could see great. This one you can't see. I am gonna be using a wrench. What we have to do is kind of come from the back side here underneath, and then there is an area on the back side, there is an opening. You can get a wrench in there or a ratchet possibly. Ratchets are kind of tough because you don't have a lot of space between the top of this bracket and the engine mount itself. So I have a 13 millimeter ratcheting wrench. I'm going to be trying to crack this thing loose with from the backside. So to get this engine lower, what I'm going to try to do is take this bracket back off and see if it'll allow the engine to drop lower to access that nut easier. So we'll see if that works. I've also removed the 13s from this snub mount to allow us to get movement there because we were hanging up on that on the way down. So this should allow us to drop quite a bit lower. So let's take a look. All right, let's see what we can do here. And all we're really looking to do is get this nut low enough that we can crack it loose easily. Looks like we might get there. It's water. In case you can hear that on camera, that's water because it rained pretty heavily before we started this. All right, let's take a look. Moment of truth. You're not gonna be able to see a lot of what I'm doing here, but this is basically just a 13 millimeter nut up here. It's just a matter of getting the right angle at it so you can take this thing off. That's the only challenge we're dealing with here. It's a really tight nut. It's like, it has like thread locks the whole way up and down. Oh, no. So that's why you have to keep turning it. That would be better. Hey. So now we're gonna go in with this, and it's really not that hard to go in. Just kind of stick it in there. You do want to make sure, if you look at the top of this, it has these two prongs. There is prongs in the mount itself. You want to make sure you line them up. All right, now that we're done doing that, we can put this back up. Easy. You are going to want to make sure you tighten that properly. You're not going to be able to get a torque spec on that, so just make sure it's good and tight. We'll give you a torque spec for that, but there's no chance you're gonna be able to get something in there to do it. You probably have to take the engine mount bracket off and maybe more starter out. Who knows what the official procedure is gonna be. Significantly more than what we're doing today. If I can, I'm gonna thread a bolt in just so it has a couple threads and the engine mount is kind of tucked up here. The downside of what we just did is that now our subframe is dropped down from the weight on it. The issue you run into when you drop something low like that is that it becomes a pain for things like jacking up this subframe. So we are gonna push this up like that, and then we can snug these up now that the subframe is appropriately high. If you were doing this at home on the ground, what you would want to do is probably have 2 floor jacks for this particular situation. Now we're going to reinstall all of our components and we're gonna torque down all of our bolts. We're gonna reinstall everything. There's nothing left that's complicated here, but we're gonna give you the torque specs for all of these bolts here. The nuts in the front located at the snub mount, and then the bolt on the passenger side of the engine mount bracket. Cleaning floors late at night because we made a mess everywhere because of the stupid water and the brake dust has made an absolute menagerie. Okay, so there is our video on installing engine mounts on a B7 A4. I suspect that that's going to scare off a few of you. If you are in need of parts for this, we will have links to the parts that we installed in this vehicle in the description below. You can check that out. And again, purchases for parts like this or any others help support videos just like this one. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it.